Artists, today we are going to be starting a repousse project. A repousse is a metal tooling project where we push into a piece of metal to create a relief from the reverse side. The metal that I'm giving you can sometimes be sharp on the edges, so before we even begin, our very first step is to fold the border edges twice. And so what we're going to do is we just want to make sure that this isn't going to be too sharp on the edges. So we're just going to fold the edges up on either side. So I'm just folding it once and I'm pushing it down. I'm going to do that on all four sides. The metal is pretty soft to bend, so it's going to be relatively easy. So I'm going to pause and do that on all four sides. Once you have all four sides folded once, you're going to do it one more time to give us a nice border. So I'm just going to fold all four edges one more time, and that's going to give me a nice thick border, and it will eliminate any of the sharp edges, which will be helpful when you work and when you turn this project in. Once you're done, you are going to move on to step 2, which says trace the metal onto the plan for correct sizing. So if this is our plan paper, we just want to trace our new folded border because everybody's going to fold these a little bit differently, and we don't want to miscalculate our plan. So that's going to give me a better idea of how big my plan should be. When you make your plan, you'll notice that I gave you a few things that you must include. You must include a border. So a border means we are going to be doing something along the edges of our design. We're going to have to include line, and we're going to have to include pattern. And what you design in here is totally up to you. It can be realistic. If you wanted to draw an animal or a flower or something from nature, you could do that, or it could be more abstract. You could do just some simple designs. I'm going to stick with some simple designs for mine, so I'm going to take a minute and make my plan. Now that I've finished my plan, I need to double check. Do I have a border? Yes, I do have a border. Do I have line? I have a lot of line. And do I have pattern? Patterns are things that repeat, and I do have some pattern. I could always add more to my plan once we get on the metal, but this is a really good start. Step number 4 says trace your plan onto metal using a dull pencil or a ballpoint pen, magazine or newspaper underneath. So this is how we need to set up our project. The bottom needs to be a magazine or newspaper, so we need something soft to push our metal into. So I have a nice big magazine here. And then it says next would be our metal, which would be here, and then on top we would put our plan. Now here's what we can start thinking about. If your plan was much bigger than your paper to start with, we can go ahead and take a pair of scissors and cut the extra stuff off. The edges that we created on the back are going to be behind all of our stuff. So we want to be able to flip this over because this is going to be the front and this is going to be the back. It is super important to make sure that this piece of metal is yours. So we want to take a Sharpie and just write our name on the back. Don't forget to also include your class code. Now we are ready to begin actually tooling our metal, repousse. So we're going to be putting our plan right on top. And what I would recommend is using a colored pencil for this step. That way you know exactly where you have already traced over. If I took a regular pencil and started tracing all this, I might forget where I started and where I stopped. But if I use a colored pencil on top, I will easily be able to see where I have started and where I have stopped. The magazine that is on the bottom is basically a soft surface for us to push into. So my pencil isn't super sharp, and I'm just going to take my pencil and trace right on top of my pattern. And if you peek, you can kind of start seeing where that line is starting to show up. You can determine then if you need to push a little bit harder or not. It's going to be pretty hard to poke a hole in this metal at this point, but you still want to be careful that you're not poking a hole. I can start to see the line showing up. So I'm going to just continue on with my colored pencil, and I'm going to trace over my whole design so that just the lines show up onto my metal. If you find that your plan is moving around a little bit too much on you, you can always just kind of tape your plan right to your magazine while you work. That way it doesn't move on your project too much for you. As long as it's touching the metal and the magazine, it should hold it in place a little bit. Once you're done tracing your design, carefully remove the tape if you've used tape. And you're going to want to save your plan for when we start deciding which parts are going to be concave and convex, but you should be able to see all of your lines transferred onto your metal. Now we need to talk about concave, neutral, and convex. And basically when we look at this example on your handout, concave is when you can think of something that is caving in. It's kind of pushed in. Concaved areas are going to be pushed in. We're going to have our neutral areas, which are going to be flat, and our convex areas are going to be pushed out. So what you need to think about is which areas on your relief do you want pushed out, which parts do you want to be convex, and which parts do you want pushed in. Pushed in is called concave. So what I like to do is I like to use my plan and my colored pencils to help me plan this out. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and think about which areas do I want pushed out? Which areas do I want to be convex? And I'm going to plan those by coloring those in with my colored pencil. I have picked a few areas that I want to be convex or pushed out. So what we need to do is we actually need to push them from the back. So it's going to be kind of tricky. Sometimes we're going to have to really take a peek at our plan while we're flipping to see which areas we wanted convex, because we're going to be looking at the reverse image. But the convex areas are pushed out, and they are pushed out from the back. So I had marked that I wanted the heart, that little border of the heart, to be convex. So that means it's pushed out. So I can either take my pencil or my colored pencil, and because I have a soft magazine behind my metal, it's going to be absorbing that pencil when I push out. And so I'm just kind of pushing right along that metal, and I can take a peek and see what's happening. It's actually pushing that metal out. It's creating a convex area. So I'm going to want to go ahead and go through all of my areas that I want to be convex, and I can use a pencil or a colored pencil to push those areas in from behind. Once you have finished with your convex or pushed out areas, now you decide which parts are going to be concave or pushed in. But you do have to remember that you need to leave some neutral areas. So some areas we're not really going to do much with. So on the front side of your project with your dull pencil, now you decide which areas are going to be pushed in. And sometimes we can just push in areas alongside of our neutral areas just to create more definition. So that is a concave outline. I'm pushing in right along the edge. Even though I did not push that out, it's still neutral. We just want to create a variety of spaces that are convex, concave, and neutral. And maybe it's just tracing around your border. Maybe if there are some certain areas that you want pushed in, we can just do some of those areas. Remember, we're just using a dull pencil, and we are pushing that metal in with that magazine underneath our project. The magazine is helping to absorb those pencil lines. So pick some areas to push in so that they are concave, and those are pushed in from the front. Most of my concave or pushed in areas were just going back over my lines to help, but I did add a few concave designs inside the heart and a few along the edges. So now we have a design that has a border, has line, pattern, it fills space. There are some concaved areas that I have pushed in. There are some neutral areas that I haven't touched, and there are some convex areas that I have pushed out. That's our design checklist. Once we have all those things, we are ready for our final step.